Hello guys, this is Jinxed and I'm going to run you through a normal dungeon which is called Darkheart Thicket. This is my first time tanking in a dungeon, so apologize for many mistakes that I made. The dungeon is located in Valshara, in the shadow of Shaldrasil, and it was once a lush forest, but the nightmare took over and the druids that were once tending to the woods, meditating beneath the world tree, now gone mad and the corruption spreads everywhere. Deep inside the nightmare, Lord Xavius works to break the will of his greatest prize, which is Malfurion Stormrage. In this dungeon, as a tank you will pull more trash mobs at once, so the key is pressing aggro on all of them so they don't run away and kill your healer. Watch out for mobs that have some sort of disorient, stun, or other loss of control spells that could prevent you from keeping aggro, like the owls. I really love how throughout the dungeon Xavius and Malfurion keep trash talking each other.
Those who challenge me only speed themselves to an agonizing death.
So says the shadow of Xavius.
Be still, worm. I will deal with you shortly.
I'm out of range.
Also watch for these Dread Soul Ruiners and their AoE attacks. If you pull too much of them at once, it might be a bit tricky to avoid it. Sometimes you will find a rare elite like we did here. Say hello to Mr. Ragerot, who is a pain in the ass. Not a difficult elite, but he does this large AoE, so be sure to avoid it. Couple of pulls and you will be in front of the first boss, which is Archdruid Gladelis. He was once known as among the most talented shapeshifters in all of Azeroth, and the elders of Moonglade would regularly send their most promising disciples to his care for instruction. Sadly, he was possessed by the nightmare, and that's why you're here, to free him of the torment. He does a couple of things, which include a spell called Nightfall, where he puts an area of nightmare corruption goo on the ground that you have to avoid. Primal Rampage, where he hits all enemies in a cone in front of him for a fairly large amount of damage, so be sure to position yourself behind him. He then charges forward, dealing damage and knocking everyone in his path back. As a tank, be sure to face the boss away from the party. Also, he does a Grievous Leap, which inflicts Grievous Tear. Basically, he leaps at enemies dealing physical damage and applying debuff that keeps damaging them every 3 seconds until they are healed above 90% health. Interesting in this fight is the fact that if you have a druid player with you, Gladelis will mention his artifact weapon in some way. Pretty cool touch to the character.
A fluke. Savor it and pray you do not face me next.
They will be more than prepared. For your true power rests in the nightmare.
Silence, weakling. When you open your mouth again, it will be to cry for mercy.
Next you have a couple of trash mobs which are really basic stuff. Avoid the green mushrooms, keep aggro, etc. The only mob worth mentioning here is the one called Nightmare Dweller. He casts a spell called Tormenting Eye, which is interruptible, but if you don't interrupt it, it will fear you. So keep that in mind and use interrupts if you can. After this, we are at the next boss and his name is Oakheart. He is an ancient who formed from an offshoot of Shaldrasil itself. Oakheart has survived Sundering, Cataclysm and countless blights. He was able to weather these storms by drawing strength from the essence of the dream itself, but now that wellspring has become his undoing. Oakheart does a couple of things. Crushing Grip, where he grabs the tank, squishes him a couple of times and throws at random player in the group. It does hefty amount of damage, so healers be sure to prepare some juicy heals for the tank while this is happening. Next, he does Nightmare Breath, where he burps a smelly cone of air in the direction of the tank. Face him away from the group so they don't have to smell it. Next, he stomps the ground around him like a baby throwing a tantrum and knocks all players close to him away. Strangling Roots, where he spawns roots from the ground in position of players are easily avoidable, but if you are not careful they will trap you for 1 minute if not destroyed. They also deal damage every second, so be sure to cut those as quickly as you can. Next boss is skippable, but it's nice to have all the bosses checked in the dungeon, so our group decided to do him after we defeated the Shade of Xavius, which is the main boss of this dungeon. After a few trash pulls we ended up in front of the Dresseron. Our 2 damage dealers left, so we 3-manned him and it went quite well. Similar to Oakheart, this dragon likes to burp Breath of Corruption, which deals heavy nature damage in a cone in front of him. The burp is so strong it reduces the armor by 5%, so be sure to avoid it. He also casts Downdraft that pushes the player away from him. Not a problem for melee players that usually don't have channel spells, but beware casters. If he pushes you far enough, you end up in a pile of dragon eggs that when disturbed spawn whelplings. They are annoying and deal damage upon death, so don't disturb those little bastards. Lastly, Desseron does earth-shaking roar that inflicts damage to players around him and also causes rocks to fall down in an area. Move away from it and you're fine. And the last boss of the dungeon is the Shade of Xavius. He was once a powerful mage and a counselor to Queen Azshara. He forged a pact with Sargeras to enable Legion's first invasion in Azeroth. Cursed and tormented in the wake of that defeat, Xavius now projects his true power from the nightmare into our world, focusing his dark mind to break the spirit of his old rival Malfurion. Shade of Xavius does a few abilities. Festering Grip does nature damage to player and decreases healing taken by 15%. Feed on the weak targets a random player and inflicts shadow damage over 5 seconds. Induced Paranoia affects random player, and if they stand close to allies they are horrified of their appearance for 5 seconds. Apocalyptic Nightmare does damage to close enemies and then rains infernal balls from the sky. Be sure to not get hit by sad balls. After this encounter, Mr. Malfurion tells you that you fought well but only defeated Xavius' shadow. To defeat Xavius, you must go deeper.